Have you ever heard of earthquake lights? For centuries, there have been these strange reports of glowing orbs, flashes, even pillars of light in the sky right before or during a major quake. For the longest time, science just wrote it off as folklore. But now, it's a real accepted phenomenon. The question is, what in the world is causing it? Today, we're diving into a paper that asks a pretty wild question. What if these lights aren't just some weird side effect? What if they're actually a massive clue to the real cause of earthquakes themselves? A clue that suggests mainstream science might have the entire thing completely backward. All right, let's get into it. Before we can really unpack this new theory, you first have to understand just how long the scientific community basically ignored the whole idea of earthquake lights. I mean, reports of these lights go way, way back to ancient times, but for hundreds of years, they were just dismissed. It wasn't until the 1960s, during an earthquake swarm in Japan, that somebody finally snapped clear photographs. That forced scientists to admit, okay, these things are real. The problem is, even now, nobody can seem to agree on why they happen. So, what are the official explanations? Well, most of them focus on the absolutely incredible forces that are at play deep down in the Earth's crust. The most popular idea out there relies on something called the piezoelectric effect. It sounds super complicated, but it's not. The basic idea is simple. You squeeze certain crystals, like quartz, and they generate an electric charge. That's it. So the mainstream theory kind of puts it all together like this. An earthquake creates insane mechanical stress, right? That stress squeezes rocks that have quartz in them, kind of like a giant lighter flint. This whole process generates a massive electrical charge that zaps to the surface and lights up the air, creating the glow we see. It makes sense, but not everyone is convinced. And that brings us to the author of the paper we're exploring, Mathis. He has this to say: a pig-headed refusal to look at evidence is often sold as skepticism. He argues that what mainstream science calls being skeptical is really just refusing to look at evidence that doesn't fit the current models. And he thinks the evidence for a totally different cause is just overwhelming. So let's get to the core of what he's proposing. This isn't just a new explanation for the lights. His theory flips the entire idea of what causes an earthquake completely on its head. Okay, look at this. This is the fundamental difference. The mainstream view says the ground waves, the shaking, compresses the crystals, and that creates the lights. The lights are an effect. But Mathis's theory, it says a deeper electromagnetic wave is the cause of both the ground shaking and the lights happening at the same time. To put it as simply as possible, he's saying that conventional seismology is looking at the whole problem totally backward. In his view, the lights are not just some secondary effect, not a weird byproduct of the ground shaking itself. Instead, he proposes that both the earthquake and the lights are just two different symptoms of a single, much larger cause, a universal energy field he calls the charge field. So how does this all supposedly work? Well, Mathis says to imagine this universal charge field. Think of it like an invisible river of energy that's just constantly flowing through our planet. As this energy current moves through parts of the Earth's crust with different densities, it creates these powerful electromagnetic waves, or EM waves. He argues these waves are what physically move the ground and cause the quake. But at the exact same time, those EM waves just keep going, shooting right up into the atmosphere where they light up the air and create those mysterious lights. Now, that is a really bold claim. So what evidence does he actually have to back this up? He points to a couple of different lines of inquiry that he believes have been pretty much ignored. A huge piece of his argument comes from Japanese research done back in the 90s, and get this quote from a paper by N. Takeuchi. It says, "The observed electric P and S wave arrival times agree exactly with seismic data." For Mathis, these studies are basically the smoking gun. He sees that perfect timing match as direct proof that seismic waves aren't just mechanical, they are fundamentally electromagnetic. He also brings up later Japanese papers showing that these waves cause electrical changes in the atmosphere, which to him proves the wave doesn't just stop at the ground. It keeps going up, just like his theory predicts. The second clue he presents is something you've probably heard about: animals acting really weird right before an earthquake. He connects this to a proven biological ability called magnetoception. We know tons of creatures, from birds to bees and even cows and deer, can actually sense electromagnetic fields. So, if earthquakes are preceded by these big EM fluctuations, well, that would perfectly explain why animals seem to know something is coming. And this is where it all leads to the biggest, most dramatic implication of his entire theory. Because if he's right, it wouldn't just rewrite science textbooks. It could completely revolutionize our ability to predict these disasters and save an incredible number of lives. Just look at the difference. Our current early warning systems have to wait to detect the first physical ground shaking. That gives us what, seconds, maybe a minute of warning at the absolute best? The author literally calls this pathetic. But a system based on his theory would be monitoring for those EM field changes before the ground ever starts to move. The potential warning time could jump from just a few seconds to maybe even a few days. And he argues this isn't just a theory. He points to the 1975 Haicheng earthquake in China. Authorities there ordered a massive evacuation days before a huge 7.3 quake hit, and that decision was made, in large part, because of widespread reports of, you guessed it, strange animal behavior. The estimated number of lives saved, 150,000. So Mathis ends by basically throwing down a challenge to the scientific establishment. He says, sure, the claim is that no one has found a reproducible link between animal behavior and quakes. But then he asks, could that be because American scientists have made little or no real effort to even look for one since the 1970s? So that's the question we're left with. Are these lights, the strange animal behavior, these obscure research papers, are they all clues to a scientific revolution that's being ignored? Or is this just a really compelling fringe theory? The paper makes a powerful argument that those lights in the sky are trying to tell us something huge about the ground under our feet, if we're just willing to look at the evidence in a completely new light.